2008 versus 2022. In uncertain times, gold is always certain. If you are very familiar with the TV series Peaky Blinders, you would remember Esme Shelby making this particular statement in season 6. And right now, even gold appears to be questionable with the economy currently in a declining trend, a clueless administration in charge, and an unpredictable future ahead. People now frequently draw comparisons between the current state of the economy and the 2008 financial crisis. As we do in today's video, which contrasts 2008 versus 2022. According to official records, the greatest economy downturn in US history spanned from December 2007 to June 2009. We would know that the collapse of the housing market, which was accompanied by low interest rates, cheap credit, poor regulation, and awful subprime mortgages, is what caused the catastrophe. For those of you who aren't familiar with the era, we are sure you would be wondering what caused such terrible chaos during that period. Well, we can tell you that the primary factor would be the collapse of the housing bubble, which occurred as a result of high-risk housing loan foreclosures. The event then caused a credit problem in the global financial system, and also a sharp decline in bank lending. The US household net worth plummeted, losing $19.2 trillion in value. The GDP, commonly known as the gross domestic product, declined 4.3%, the most in 60 years. Guys, can you even imagine that? Not only that, in addition, from July 2008 to March 2009, the US lost $7.4 trillion in stock wealth. Home foreclosures also increased dramatically, with nearly 3 million occurring annually in 2009 and 2010. Although the crisis in subprime mortgages was the biggest factor, several interrelated financial concerns also contributed to the specialized sector bubble bust, which had a knock-on effect that led to business failures, stock market crashes, and a general economic slowdown. Man, it seriously was not a great period for the world at large during that time. Although the market ended up recovering, and perfectly, well, if we may add, the battle scars of the Great Recession still haunt them as we see people go haywire in fear of such an incident repeating itself. We cannot blame them though. If you witnessed a big bubble burst of economic failure, we're pretty sure you would be traumatized too. Over the past few months, the world economy has only seen a growth decline, or let's even say slow growth coupled with extremely high inflation. All of this is a result of the constraints and also increased money printing during the pandemic. Soft gains on the 10-year Treasury barely exceeded 4%, the highest level ever since 2008. And thanks to that shift, housing prices have reached their highest point of 6.7% since, wait for it, July 2007. Meanwhile, when the UK bond market crumbled sometime in September, a London banker said to the Financial Times, "At some point this morning, I was worried this was the beginning of the end. It was not quite a Lehman moment, but it got close." Guys, the Lehman moment mentioned here is referring to the 2008 recession crisis. We would know that the unemployment rate is declining fast, especially now, reaching an extraordinary low level of just 3.6%, as opposed to the norm when it increases and more people lose their jobs, which is precisely when a recession happens. However, this is the primary distinction between the potential 2022 recession catastrophe and the 2008 disaster. With all that doom, it is only natural to question if the past may somehow repeat itself. But you should all be aware that the overall state of the economy and the country is not nearly as bad as it was in 2008, which was almost 15 years ago. Yes, the economy shrank in the first half of the year, but the level of unemployment is quite minimal and salaries keep increasing, although they can't be said to keep the same pace with inflation. Should there be more sorrow and gloom before 2022 ends, given the dismal circumstances so far? And are there any other similarities or distinctions between the catastrophe in 2022 and the Great Recession? Keep watching and you'll find out shortly. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, the United States entered a recession in December 2007. But it was not until September 2008, the month that Lehman Brothers went bankrupt and the global financial crisis hit its most destructive stage, that core inflation reached a critical peak during this period. Over the following 16 months, inflation would fluctuate between 1.4% and 2.2%, before ending 2009 at a still vibrant 1.8%, only 0.7% below its peak. Even the Great Recession, also known as the Great Depression, which was the worst financial and economic crisis since that time, was unable to quickly reduce primary U.S. inflation. The final bottoming out of core inflation at 0.6% wouldn't come until October 2010. In the present, this prompts a few unsettling questions. Barring a repeat of the global financial crisis, core inflation is still high and could take some time to stabilize. Even if it were to start a moderate decrease back toward the Fed's headline inflation benchmark of 2%, hence, we would know that inflation is worse in 2022. In 2008, the Consumer Price Index (CPI) was negative 0.02%, while presently in 2022, it is at plus 8.3%. Prices, as measured by the Consumer Price Index, are increasingly rising faster than at any time since the 1980s. Experts share their opinions and claim that inflation won't likely revert to normal until 2023. Hearing this, it just sounds like we are in a lot of trouble this coming year, doesn't it? Additionally, investors are suffering as a result of the Fed's strategic move toward higher interest rates, while consumers endure the pain of more extremely expensive meat and house rent. This was not an issue in 2008 when borrowing rates were almost zero and the economy was still not expanding. In the end, inflation in 2022 will look very different from inflation in 2008. When considering the stock market, the 2008 financial crisis was interspersed with dramatic events that highlighted the stock market's performance. Lehman Brothers, for example, failed. The chief executives of the biggest banks in the country pleaded with the New York Federal Reserve Bank for financing. One statistic undoubtedly validates the drama. 2008 was a significantly worse year for stock markets than 2022. When inflation-adjusted returns are taken into account, it shows that the S&P 500 index was rounding up to negative 37% in 2008 and to negative 19% in 2022. Even with the effects of this year's high inflation, 2008 was extremely difficult for real estate investors. The financial crisis of 2008 was exacerbated by a collapse in the housing market together with financial derivatives that few people truly understood. There is no doubt that the real estate market is experiencing difficulties as a result of rising interest rates and the difficult economic environment, and many firms are reluctant to relocate to downtown areas. Still, the real estate market today is very different from that of 2008. However, this cannot be said of gold. Amid 2008, when equities crashed and pessimists thought the world was ending, gold was a safe refugee in the storm. Unfortunately, there won't be any such luck in 2022. As a solid investment, gold has been a big disappointment with stock markets collapsing and prices skyrocketing. The reputation of gold as a hedge against inflation has been severely tested by this. Not to mention that Bitcoin has had a terrible year in 2022, with a price drop of more than 60%. Yes, Satoshi Nakamoto was aware of cryptocurrencies back in 2008, but his entire career was greatly influenced by the financial system's impending collapse that year. There might be so many downturns right now, and nothing but bad news so far this year. But 2022 is not over yet, guys. Let us hope that this year still ends better than it began. And we have come to the end of today's video. Hope you enjoyed watching this as much as we enjoyed making it. What do you think of the recession in 2008 and the impending one in 2022? Share your thoughts in the comments section. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tap the bell icon so you can get notifications about any future videos.